Put your red shirt on and a brown coat too. Everybody's joining the crew. We got just one ring, let we rule them all. Hope you'll remember your towel. Get your Ulu feathers and your needler guns. A sonic screwdriver or a sword +1. Use Valerian steel it will get you to come. To the pit tank. To the pit tank. The Rocky Mountain pit tank.
Hi, I'm Guy,
Hi, I'm Troy.
and this is Geek Tank.
Your mint conditioned, limited run, 1 out of 1 comic book that's bagged and boarded and priced at $49.99 with 30 different comic variant covers, sized podcast.
So we're here today with Dave Baker, who is an author and has done, as you might have guessed, I know it's going to be a shock, comics. Going from that intro. Thank you for joining us today, Dave.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I loved that intro. That was great.
Well, thank you. I didn't invent it. He did.
I just wrote it.
Yeah.
Well, it's good.
Just
It's
came
good.
up with it. Okay, so I've got up here. I know that you're working on Voyager, and you've got a few other indie projects. We're going to talk a little bit about all of that here on the show. But we'll start with what got you into writing. That's always a good one. I always like starting there because we'll start at the beginning.
Did you decide that having money for food was just not something you cared
Right.
about?
Yeah. I just was like, you know what? Eating? I don't think so. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
It's funny. I've never really been able to do anything else. It's almost kind of like a weird, like, spiritual calling. You know, it's like my mom tells the story of when I was like 3 years old. When I was like 3 years old, sitting at the kitchen table, I started crying. Like, we were all eating dinner, and I just like burst out crying because I didn't know how to read or write very well. I mean, who does at 3? But you know, it was giving me anxiety because I knew that was a thing I had to do, and I wasn't good at it. And she was like, "What's going on? What's the matter?" And I was like, "I know that I'm gonna be a writer, and I don't wanna." And she like was so perplexed of like, "What does that mean, be a writer?" It literally, I think, is just something I've just kind of either, I don't really believe in past lives, but you know, it's something that is just kind of in there for better or for worse. And I've always just loved comics and always known that like they're the greatest art form in the history of mankind. And for better or for worse, I'm going to monastically devote my life to the furtherment of the cause of the medium is the message. And that medium, God, is almost swore. That medium.
It's nice. Did we lose him?
I think you cut out on that last word, Dave.
Oh, well, that's good because I almost swore. So
But no, that medium is.
Oh, the medium is the message, man. The
The
medium
message.
is comics. The medium is
We lost
comics.
the
I
message.
agree. Comics are awesome. Comics are the best.
Comics is what got me into reading because until I got into comics, I didn't really dive into books enough to trigger the part of the imagination that makes books so great.
Right.
And I would just reject them, and I'm talking like around like 8 or 9 years old.
Sure.
And a combination of my brother, who was 10 years older than me, sharing his comics with me, and especially when you're at that age and you see heavy metal for the first time, you're like, oh, okay, let's not let mom and dad see this one.
Yeah.
So that, and then the Scholastic books back in school where they put in just like a little snippet of like one of the best parts of the story.
Yeah.
Those things like, oh, well, now I want to go read Flowers for Algernon because this sounded awesome.
Yeah.
And then you read it, and then your life is
Right,
ruined
I was gonna say.
forever after that.
Right.
Kinda
Yeah.
like, I'm just gonna go watch Schindler's List.
Yeah.
That seems like a thing because I like World War II movies.
Seems uplifting.
Yeah, definitely.
And but yeah, comic books I think are a great gateway for kids who aren't into reading to help get them into reading because it's yeah.
I mean, I would even say that comics are just a great way for adults to read because Americans don't read enough as is, and I think that there is an immense power and an untapped potential in the medium. I think while amazing advances have been made in the last 10, 20 years, there's still so much ground to cover, and there's still so many amazing stories that have yet to be told, and so many creators today that are making vibrant, beautiful work that like most people don't know exists, and probably won't until 10 years from now. There's a PBS special about like, oh, that 2020 boom in kids comics was great or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
So
Oh,
so
we had a comment by our viewer, and the viewer found out it was user error and not our end, which usually it's our technical problem. So we were trusting when someone says
she's
you have
also
a technical
out on Twitch, so it could be anything.
muscle spasms.
That happens with Twitch all the time.
So there's so many directions to go with that initial question.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna go with what were some of your favorite comics when you started, and what are some of your favorite comics now to read?
Oh man, that's so great. So one, the thing that got me into comics, period, is Tintin. Hergé's Tintin is
The French comic.
Oh yeah, the Belgian comic. Yeah, I love Hergé as an artist. His politics. There are periods where I like him, and there are periods where he was literally working for the Nazis. So not so great. But I love those books, and I think they're an interesting record, both of the time they were created in, and also the potential of the medium and what people thought of it at that point. And also, I'm fascinated by them because of what I was just saying of kind of the flaws of the person, because they have this primal innocence to them, where they're a man reflecting on his youth. Or actually, when it starts when he is a kid, that he was making when he was like 17, 18, 19, and then he keeps making them up until he's about like 55, 60. And it's interesting to see someone's politics shape and wax and wane, his worldview open up, his politics get more conservative and more regressive, more open and giving. And it's so fascinating to see someone's life tracked through the prism of story, being able to see like, oh, wow. Like there's a really good documentary called, I believe it's called Hergé and Me. And this kid who is a French like high schooler or a Belgian high schooler went to the like Tintin factory, the Hergé studio, and interviewed him. And for some reason he just like opened up, and it was when they were making Tintin in Tibet, which if you're unfamiliar, Tintin has to go to Tibet to save his friend, and there's snow everywhere, and they kind of fight an abominable snowman, and it's a fun kind of Raiders of the Lost Ark adventure story. And the kid asks him like, what made you want to make Tintin in Tibet? And he, there's these recordings of him, like he's smoking a cigarette and he like inhales a cigarette, and he says, I had just gotten divorced and I felt impure, and I felt like I was not the man I used to be, and I wanted purity in my life, and I wanted to return to the kind of innocence of a child, and I just wanted to draw white vistas of snow. And so the idea of going to Tibet just appealed to me. So I just kept drawing snow over and over and over again. And I thought I was like, this is so fascinating that I mean, every artist is like that in some ways, just some have trouble articulating it. And so as a kid, Hergé really and Tintin really affected me deeply. And honestly still do. Like the book I'm working on right now that I'm drawing is like a girl adventurer Nancy Drew style comic, and it is not necessarily like my version of Tintin, but it's very apparent why that corollary is there for me as a person. You can be like, oh, this person really loved Hergé or Tintin when they were a kid, or Hardy Boys or whatever. But these days I read.
Did that influence your artwork too? I mean, does his artwork influence your artwork?
Yeah, definitely. I usually say that like the big three for me, in terms of like the actual mechanics of how I draw, are Hergé, Shotaro Ishinomori, and Jeff Darrow. Like I love all three of them deeply. I mean, I love a ton of people. I love Katsuhiro Otomo and Brandon Graham and Sophie Campbell and Julian Tamaki, and I could talk for years about the cartoonists I'm obsessed with. But in terms of the like formative pillars of the like visual language of how I draw, I think it's those three probably more than most. But in terms of stuff I read now, like I read a lot of indie comics. I read a lot of kind of YA coming of age comics because I love that stuff. Like one of my favorite comics is Wet Moon by Sophie Campbell, which is just like about a bunch of, cool girls in art school in Rhode Island trying to sort out life. But I also love genre stuff too. I read a lot of Star Trek stuff and superhero Big Two stuff. I'm kind of agnostic. I read basically all of the genres of comics to one degree or another.
Gotcha. I kind of wondered about. I mean, obviously, you're somewhat of a Trekkie. Are you?
Oh yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Because I mean,
yeah. I'm a hardcore Trek person. I love
reading
Star Trek.
reading through the Voyager thing, you have. I mean, if nothing else, like the little subtleties, Tuvok's way of little things like the way he complimented Janeway's hair.
Mm,
That is so Tuvok. You just
thank you.
nailed that. Seven's complaining about jokes. I mean, it all fits so well. You did a really good job of the characterization. It's
Thank you.
clear that you know these people. I mean,
Yeah.
Before the show, Guy was commenting that you really nailed the voice
Yeah.
Oh,
of Star Trek
you
episode.
have
Thank
the
you
voice.
very much.
Seriously, have the voice. And it's one of those things. I mean, I've been reading Star Trek comics since the 70s. And you know, it's like some of the early Star Trek comics, the Gold Key stuff from the
I love that shit. I love that
it's
shit.
just great. But
So good.
but I mean, from the 70s,
it's all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah, but right, exactly. It's like I don't think Kirk would ever say that, you know,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Which is funny too, because a lot of that stuff was written by Len Wein, right? Like I feel like a lot of the Gold Key
Right.
stuff was like a really young Len Wein. Which is-
I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that he may have either. I think a lot of it might have been that they didn't know what they had.
Yeah.
So they were like, just write a thing about a hero, and there's an alien guy, and I don't know. I don't have time to research it. I'll just write it because it's got to be out next week, and you know. So I feel like a lot of it's, you know, they didn't know that they had this huge thing that they had to deal with.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And of course, you know, now we've got generations of Trekkies. You know, there's people who grew up entirely on Star Trek, and so but I mean, I love it when I can read a comic or a book, a novelization, and the voices, I can hear Janeway's very distinct voice. You know, Kate
Right.
Mulgrew's very, very distinct voice.
They're nasally. We must go into the warp field. You don't understand. Chakotay, we must go over there.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, so you'd be in the mess hall doing an impersonation of her too. I see. So
Yeah, there was a good 6-month period where that was one of my recurring bits. Is I would just do Janeway cooking or eating food like she was on the bridge. So I'd be like to my girlfriend, I'd be like,
Nicole, hand me the salt shaker, please. I must have the salt shaker. If we don't, we will. Oh, look at this. Oh, so much salt. Too much salt, Mr. Nicole. Nicole.
yeah, that was
That's
a
awesome.
And
bit.
you have to do the classic. You have to do the classic. She's right behind me, isn't
Right.
she?
Yeah.
Yep. So, but yeah, I mean that's the thing that I was really impressed by. I love it whenever I can hear the voices, but you also got the humor. Getting Chakotay Tuvok humor is always dangerous waters. Some people can just really screw that up, and so I wanted to give you props for that because that was really
Thank
cool.
you.
So,
Thank you. Yeah. Tuvok is my favorite Star Trek character. Period.
Nice.
And I mean, I've even gone so far as to like I went to go see Tim Russ's band play.
Just so you could be in proximity.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to him afterwards. He was, nice enough. I think Tim Russ is a little bit of, I don't know if he's necessarily a shy soul, but he's not necessarily the most gregarious person. He's just kind of like a little bit more reserved,
That's
but yeah,
generally
he has
the
a
impression I've gotten with him too.
yeah he has a standing gig here in LA. He plays the Kibitz Room at well, I mean, it's not. Actually, it might be open now. I don't know, but it wasn't open for a long time. Cantor's Deli here in LA. He plays every third Sunday at 10 p.m. Him and his band plays at the Kibitz Room there. And I've been multiple times and talked to him and whatever, and it's nice enough. And honestly, it's just very charming to me. It's very charming because it's like it's very apparent what it is. It's him. He plays like I don't know if you guys have ever heard the Tim Russ Experience, but it's kind of fun. Like I guess I would describe it as like dad band 70s groove rock. So it's all kind of like, you know, noodly, like, you know, and
Gotcha.
he's the front man. He sings and plays guitar, and a bunch of his friends, or I'm assuming they're his friends, are the backing band. And you know, it's usually a pretty packed house, and I would say 90% of the people there are Star Trek people.
That makes
And
sense.
it's always nice too, because you can kind of like, that's the thing I love about Trek people is they and I count myself among them. They have such a very distinct way of living that you can be in a crowd and be like, that motherfucker's a Star Trek person.
Right.
And like, you know, you're
There's
sitting
Trekkie.
in,
There's
yep,
a
oh,
Trekkie.
yep, totally. And yeah, I love it. I love it so much.
I was trying to look up the name of his band, but his band is the Tim Russ Band.
It's literally the Tim Russ Experience. Yeah. Or is it the band? I thought it was the Tim Russ Experience.
Where is it at?
I know he has stuff on his website, but my recollection is that it was the Tim Russ Experience, but it very well could be the Tim Russ Band. But yeah, they play a lot of covers and like I said, like 70s groove rock stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but he's my favorite character. Period. So when this whole process kind of got started, you know, I don't think CBS or IDW was asking for a Tuvok comic, but I just pitched stuff that I knew, regardless what they picked, I would be able to just like insert Tuvok sideways into it.
Right.
Because
So
I
like
just love him
7
so
of
much.
9. We want you to do 7. Okay, 7 of 9 and Tuvok. There you go.
I mean, literally, yeah. Like they were, you know, the kind of design remit for the pitch was like, we want to do something. We want to do a mini series, and we want to do a mini series, and we want it to be 7 of 9 focused. It can be whatever you want, but it just has to be 7 of 9 focused. And because of the whole Picard, you know, her being more popular again and all that kind of stuff. And then they wanted it to be set during the 7 years of the original show. They didn't want something that was in the Fenris Rangers kind of negative zone of the middle continuity between the original Berman era and the current Trek era, just in case, you
They
know.
decided to go back on it.
Yeah, in case they decided to do something, or you know, they would, you know, whatever. Because there are comics that are set during stuff like that. Usually, Mike Johnson writes that stuff, like the Countdown stuff, and
Yeah.
those kind of like hard continuity comics. But I think those are very kind of, they're watched over very specifically by the licensor to make sure that everything lines up. And also Mike knows, like he used to work for Bob Orsi and Alex Kurtzman, and knows JJ, and so he's like in that world very, very heavy.
Are you having a lot of contact with Van Sitters?
No.
Because I mean, I know he like oversees all of that stuff too from the CBS side. And the only reason I know him at all was because I was doing a fan comic, and we hit that point with, well, specifically Axanar, which kind of tipped everything on the fan side.
Yeah.
And all of us fan people had to kind of like back out and everything like that. And he was reaching out to all of us and like cross talking to everybody. And so
see that's really interesting to me, because I know that you know, the Axanar stuff kind of screwed over a lot of the people who were making. I guess it didn't screw them over, because they're stealing the copyright. Like they're
right. I mean,
so
to be fair, we're all running on the other one's copyright, and we knew that. I mean,
yeah,
but I was
I'm
working
just
with Farragut for a while, which was one of the
oh
fan
really
films. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
Interesting.
So
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm always curious about those ecosystems, because they seem like so much fun. Like I'd write a weird Star Trek fan thing. Let's do it. You know,
Yeah.
it seems like a lot of fun people doing stuff. And
a lot of them were very straight up. Phase 2, Farragut. You know, all of our teams had a CBS rep whom we were in communication with. So,
interesting, really.
To keep everything above board, and the rule was very straightforward. We just couldn't make money off of it.
Really?
That
So
was,
pre Axanar, like Star Trek Continues or Phase 2, they would, when it was uploaded, they would send it to CBS and be like, "Hey, we're making this," and
we were
CBS was
doing
like,
it even before
"Cool,
that. Yeah, even before that, we were
wow,
doing that. I mean, really, John Broughton and James Cawley, who are the leaders of the two, you know, I know for a fact, Farragut, John Broughton, and Phase 2 is James Cawley. They put tens of thousands of dollars into those sets. I mean, those sets are beautiful
yeah,
and exquisite. The one James Cawley's set still stands out in Ticonderoga, and
I've been there.
Oh,
and
cool.
so it's and I want to go there. And Broughton's set was moved to Oklahoma, and so it's so those sets were accurate to like the buttons. I
Yeah.
remember the guys saying that they had to figure out which colors the buttons were so that they could get the buttons in the right colors on the control panels. So I mean, that's highly detailed. But yeah, they were in communication with CBS from the get-go.
Wow.
A lot of the people who were on those shows were actually in the industry, and
Yeah.
so
Well, I mean, Star Trek continues most notoriously, right? Like
right.
Vic Mignogna being a bigger voice actor guy, and all the kind of like celebrity row convention people like Lou Ferrigno and Aaron Gray, and there's some other people that I'm sure I'm blanking on very disrespectfully, but like very bigger kind of
well, they even got George
genre
Takei and
people.
Walter Koenig to come back in and reprise their roles. And
Star Trek continues? What?
Yeah. Yeah.
What? How?
I'm sorry.
On the Ticonderoga.
It was Phase 2 that got them to come back in.
Oh,
That's right,
okay.
2.
I was like, what?
Continues
I've seen every
didn't.
episode of that thing, and I don't remember that. Did I miss an episode?
It was Phase 2. I'm so sorry. It was Phase 2. But yeah, they got with Phase 2. So James Cawley, who was the guy who started Phase 2, he's an Elvis impersonator. That's
right. Yeah.
That's
how he made the money, right? Because isn't it like in some warehouse or something? And he just
it's
like
used car lot. It's actually
I love this. I want to go there so bad.
Right?
I love this.
One of the things they showed that's not screen accurate was when they had Shatner on the set in the room that was Shatner's private quarters on the Star Trek ship. They had him sign his desk in Sharpie. Wow. And they're like, well, we had the captain sign his desk, so we're not going to change the desk out. But now it's no longer screen accurate because Shatner didn't sign the desk.
Right.
So they had to cover it up with like a little placemat thing. So they're like, the placemat you haven't seen in any episodes because it wasn't there in the episodes. But here's why, and they revealed why they had done that.
Yeah,
wow,
but
I had no idea.
Cawley worked with William Ware Tice for a long time, who was the costume designer on the original series. And he was the costume designer for the first 2 seasons of Next Gen. But that's where Cawley started. He was working as a apprentice to William Ware Tice, and so he ended up with a whole bunch of original series uniforms. He ended up with a whole bunch of Next Gen uniforms and things like that when he closed out his shop. So he decided he's one of us super Trekkies, so he went on ahead and started building this set in this.
So fascinating. Yeah, I know we probably I should be in full Carnival Barker mode promoting Seven's Reckoning.
It's
a
good book. You should go read it, guys.
You could put a screenshot up of it. You could do a full screenshot.
But I'm so curious about. I love just in general, because I am such a big fan. Like I love fan ecosystem stuff, and there's something so fascinating about Trek fandom specifically because they literally saved. That's the book. Yeah.
Over here. It's over here.
That's the book. That's the book. Yeah. I'm so fascinated by that kind of fan film ecosystem. Like it's so riveting to me. And it's interesting too how like certain people kind of become like mini celebrities, but they're celebrities specifically in the fan world. Like that's such an like anthropologically fascinating thing to me. Like almost kind of like in a modern context, like intellectual property and brand management is its own type of chaos magic. And the closer you get to the brand, the more kind of people's attention is drawn to you. It's so interesting to me.
And it is also fascinating because Cawley was approached to turn his set into a museum, and that's sanctioned. Not just sanctioned, I think, and this is one of those. Don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure he's getting money from CBS to run that museum. So
I don't know if it's open yet, but they were adding the next gen set to it as
yeah,
well.
they're adding a next gen set to it and all kinds
Wow.
of stuff. I mean, it's becoming.
Where is it
mecca
again? It's
for
in like
Ticonderoga.
Ticonderoga.
Oh, Ticonderoga.
Ticonderoga,
Wow.
New York.
Yeah, I was lucky enough that I have family up there in Albany, New York, and we've made it like a day trip to go up there. And you were
wow.
busy because I invited Guy, but it would have been like a week-long commitment, so it wasn't something.
I couldn't do
So
it.
then, when they get the next gen set up, we need
We'll
to go to
definitely
it.
go. Yeah, they've got weird
Dude, let me know.
rules,
Let's
though.
road trip. I'm game.
we'll road
Let's
trip.
go. Let's go.
You just come pick us up on your way out
Another
because
thing.
we're
isn't there-
halfway there.
I don't remember if it's in Colorado or is it New Mexico? Isn't there? There's a Trek museum somewhere in your guys' neighborhood too, right?
Was that the
There's like
one, or was that something?
it's over by you guys. There, I was looking at it the other day where they have the chair from Nemesis, and they have it's like in an airplane hangar, and they have the chair from Nemesis, and they have all of this weird stuff where it's like, look, it's Michael Jordan's head appliance from this one episode where they didn't throw it away and it's rotting. Like,
Which is
it
about
sounds
right.
I mean, that's what I'm saying about Star Trek. Like, that's why I love Star Trek so much, because there's such a specific patina to the level of kind of beautifully fun and really really sad. Sorry, really sad that
It's
everything always is with Star Trek.
We'll
Like,
edit
it's-
it in post. It'll be fine.
I love the fact that everything involving Star Trek is simultaneously like really janky and homemade, and also a globally recognized phenomenon.
Right. It is really weird. Of course, I'll go out on like half of the subreddits on Reddit for Star Trek, and I'm fascinated, even with Facebook. When you look at the Facebook pages, or when you look at the subreddits, the number of people who are like, well, here in France, we're 10 days later than all of you guys in America to see the episodes, and I'm like, France? Or then you'll get, well, in Kazakhstan, we only get it in English and German. And you're like, like, you're over there in Kazakhstan watching Star Trek, and it's so
amazing.
wild.
Yeah. I mean, that's
Um,
kind of, that's when I got the call that, they had officially approved the book. That was kind of one of those moments where I was like, oh, things are going to be different.
yeah,
Like, not that anybody really gives a crap about my stupid licensed comic, but I care because there is such a long hallowed tradition. There's a 50-year tradition of people making Star Trek stories, and every Star Trek story has an underlying girding of that we can be better
mhm.
as a human race. We can do better. We can treat each other with more empathy. We can go places and we can accomplish things. And I think
Right.
that's so important, and something, the infinite diversity and infinite combination is a credo that I care about so deeply. Like the marrow of my bones is forged in the idea that together we are better.
Right.
And,
Right.
and that was, the idea that I would be one little brick on this 50-year fictional wall that's being built by all these people over time is just so cool to me. Like,
I couldn't even imagine what I'd be. I mean, that'd be so awesome as a Trekkie to be able to finally have them say, "Well, here you go. You're greenlit."
yeah, I mean, I wrote an issue of Star Trek Waypoint. I didn't write the whole issue. I wrote a story in an issue of Star Trek Waypoint, like a year ago, 2 years ago. I did an Esri Dax story with my partner Nicole Gu, artist of Shadow of the Batgirl, available wherever comics are sold. Go buy it; it's good. And
I was
and
so afraid you were going to say Nicole DeVore. And I was like, what? How'd you pull that one off?
Yeah, no, I mean, look, hey, Nicole, if you're tired of having kids and being Canadian in Canada, I mean, I'm just saying, hi, hello, I'm here.
Right.
I'm trying to get to know you. I feel like we could have a bond that's probably going to be platonic and a friendship, but also like come write some Esri Dax comics with me.
Right.
Like,
Because you can take the Canadian out of Canada, but you can't take the Canada out of the Canadian.
yeah, but
I was just thinking, if you were in a similar situation as Dave, you would always have a backpack full of the comic and you would everywhere you go, you're like, "Hey, I wrote this. Hey, I wrote
Well,
this. Hey, I
it's
wrote
so funny because we went to the big creation convention last year in Vegas, and I was walking by, and Nicole DeBoer was there, and I like looked at her, and I'm obsessed with her. I'm obsessed with her. I love what's that fucking the movie? Not the Sphere, the one where they're in the maze. It's the
Cube.
Canadian Cube. Cube. I love Cube. She's so good in that movie, and she's so good as Esri. And I was walking down the aisle, and like she was there, and it was one of those kind of like,
Right.
like I was like immediately
You'll
like,
never wash your eyeballs again.
that's why I was like, oh, I'm so stupid. Why didn't I bring the Star Trek comic that I worked on? Of
Right.
course she's gonna be here. What else is she doing? Like, I should go give it to her. It's a perfect excuse to talk to her, because I'm not gonna lie, like, you know, I don't really know what to say to LeVar Burton. Like,
Right.
you know, like I was standing 3 feet from him, but like, what do you say? Like, I love you?
Right.
Like, that
With a
doesn't, that's not
question
a,
mark. You have to say
Yeah.
a question mark so you don't sound that creepy.
yeah,
know?
like it's, you know, or like the woman who plays Detmer on Discovery. She's my favorite Discovery character. And I was like, oh, you're here. And her name is Emily Coates, I think. And I was going to go talk to her, and then I was like, what am I going to say? Like, I don't even really know anything about your character, but you just seem really cool. I like how you look sarcastically at each other on the bridge.
Right.
We've been in that situation with LeVar Burton because we were at a convention and they were trying to set up an interview for us. And so we were quickly trying to brainstorm, like, what questions can we ask that he hasn't been asked yet? Because you know he's been
Always our big
asked
thing.
every question. So
Yeah, I mean,
it's like, focus on reading Rainbow. Focus on reading Rainbow.
Right. Well, yeah, and that's like, well, and I once interviewed Walter Koenig, right? You know, of course, I'm old school Trekkie, original series, and he decides to screw with me, and I'm like, really? Let's not do this, please. Because I was like, I'm here with Walter Koenig, who played Chekhov in Star Trek, and he goes, 50 years, and all I've got to show is 3 seasons of a show that was 50 years ago. That's it. I'm out of here. And he stands up, and I'm sitting there going, I'm crashing the interview. I just interviewed him, and I'm crashing the interview.
You were taking him so seriously. You thought you were.
And I was sure that was the end of it. And he turns around with this big grin on his face. He's messing with me, and I'm like, don't do that. I'll cry.
Yeah.
I'm a Trekkie, dude. You can't do that to me. I'll cry.
Yeah.
We've heard that Brent Spiner does the same thing. So if we ever get an interview with Brent Spiner, Troy gets to.
I'm over here.
Yeah. Troy gets to do it. So because Troy A is not a hardcore Trekkie, and B kind of likes it when they start messing with him because
I can yes and it.
Yeah. I feel like if you were interviewing Brent Spiner, like, I think he's into history and stuff. Like, I feel like I would like ask him weird historical questions about whatever he's into, or like comedy stuff. I know he's really into comedy. I think he likes jazz too.
Historical war that you've had.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, obviously, maybe a little research would be helpful of kind of like, you know, like the Conan O'Brien thing where Conan is obsessed with Truman or whatever. But like, I'm like, Brent Spiner is not a guy who likes Star Trek. He's just in Star Trek, you know?
Right. He's more than once said he's not really that. I mean, he's grateful. Which I think that's a difference. And you get that from the original series. You get that from Next Gen. You can't really, the guys after Next Gen, you can't really say, well, you didn't know what you were getting into. I mean,
right.
So all of those guys from Next Gen era, past that, DS9, Voyager, Enterprise, and certainly the new Kurtzman shows, they're much more of we're very grateful to be in this franchise.
Yeah.
It's paying all of our bills. I'm buying a second house right now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but it's not just that. They're very, very gentle with the fans, and they're good with the fans.
I mean, specifically, I would just point at Doug Jones. Like, that guy is a saint. He's a saint. Like, I mean, I'm not going to say that we're friends. Like, we follow each other on the internet, and he knows my name and talks to me and stops and for some reason he always picks me up, which normally pisses me off. But when Doug Jones does it, I'm like, I can't be mad at you, Doug. Like, you're so sweet. But yeah, he's just like the nicest human being, and it's so genuine. and
Yeah.
so sincere.
He's so real.
Yeah,
I
he really
agree,
is.
I agree.
He's a wonderful human being. I like him a lot.
He was just
I
on.
met him at a convention, and he was just sitting there. Nobody. It was after the first episode, the Vulcan Hello, but it was before any of the other episodes had aired. So we just had that one episode, and people were still doing the I'm not paying for CBS All Access, so we only had like 6 of us who'd seen any of it at all. And so nobody was at his table because it was a sci-fi convention and he had all of his horror stuff, but nobody had, really, and it was so. Anyway, I went over to him because I had seen the Vulcan Hello, and I was gonna just chat with him for a minute or two and see if he was okay, and because he was by himself. And he just sat there and chatted with me and talked to me, and he let me take a picture with him, which I didn't realize later on he was charging, but he didn't ask me for anything. But I caught his sign in my picture. It says $5 for a selfie, and I was like, I would have paid $5 for that. I didn't even know,
Yeah.
But I did
Melatonin.
say to him, yeah, I know. I did say to him, I said, hey, the Trekkies can be a contentious lot. Don't take it personal. We love you. It's like, we're going to be fine. And, it'll be cool. And he was like, oh, thank you. And I thought he was going to cry. I was like, it's okay, dude. I mean, like,
Yeah, I think he's an amazing person. I think he's an amazing performer. And Saru is one of the
his sleeve.
Yeah, Saru's one of the most interesting characters on the show. Like, he's one of the only ones that has a character, but he's so great. Like, I love that he is an actual
Jet Reno, man.
It was just on Wait, Don't Tell Me this last weekend. So it's kind of neat hearing him talk about stuff other than Star Trek, too.
Cool.
So
well, he has a really elaborate career. Yeah, he was he was Mac at night. That's where he started. He was the McDonald's guy playing the piano.
Yeah.
With a moon head.
Yeah. He's in
where
Hocus Pocus.
Yeah, Hocus Pocus. I mean, he's in all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So, we've totally gone off the rails here.
well, yeah. So let's do our commercial break, and
we don't have a commercial break right now, so I'll just roll the banner.
Well, we put our commercial break like right in the middle of the screen. I think it is,
right.
or bottom, or wherever you want to put it.
There we go.
Here you go.
So, and I'll just remind everybody that the show is sponsored by Kieran Games, Geekway Homes, Shiny Garden, and your mom. Okay, so we're here again. If you're just joining us with Dave Baker, who's an author and an artist, and so he's done, as you can see up here on the screen, and I'll bring up once again, he has done Star Trek Voyager. That's what he's currently working on. He's also working on a couple of other projects. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about your other projects while we're at it, because I will sit here and talk all day long about Voyager. I mean, the fact that you weaseled this one right in the middle of like 3rd season, 4th season, right in that little hole right there, it was really great.
It theoretically takes place in between Scientific Method and Year of Hell Part 1.
Nice.
So that's the official, like,
the canonical
slot.
location for it.
Yeah.
So I was saying before the show that I like the fact that you addressed my hair theory. My theory that Star Trek gets better with the hair change, but Tuvok's addressing the hair change that has gone on with Janeway in this, and I thought that was a very nice thing. I think Star Trek is always better when there's a little bit of humanity to it. So you injected a good amount of humanity to it, so that was a good one too.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's go on ahead, and rather than me just expressing kudos all night long about how awesome a writer
I mean,
you
I'm
are,
down for that. I don't care.
yeah, I was going to say you're good for that. But let's go ahead and talk about some of your other projects while we're at it.
Yeah, sure. So Seven's Reckoning comes out November 11th in comic book stores everywhere, and 2 weeks after that, on November 24th, from Floating World Comics, I have a book called Night Hunters with Alexis Zirot and Robert Negretti, and the book follows 2 adopted brothers as they kind of work their way through the seedy underbelly. That's the cover right there. Work their way through the seedy underbelly of Gran Caracas, Venezuela, 100 years in the future. And it's kind of this dystopian crime drama where in the future, there's been this law that's been enacted where if you want to have a child in a hospital, rent an apartment, or run for public office, you have to have been or currently be a police officer. So basically, the whole society gets kind of like just ruptured in half, where half of the population becomes basically operatives of the state, and the other half become kind of slum dwelling, favela living, like techno harvester, pseudo drug dealers almost, where the only two real jobs other than being a police officer are you go to the junk heaps and like harvest old pieces of technology, or you sell this hallucinogenic drug called yopo. So the book is about these two brothers who end up on opposite sides of the law. One ends up in a gang, working in this kind of like pro-human drug dealing ring, and one ends up as a pseudo cyborg police officer. And they kind of the seesaw of power teeter totters back and forth between the two of them as they attempt to reconcile their personal differences and also ideological differences.
It's a fascinating book. It really is. It's interesting to read, and it's. I'm hearing a buzz. Are you hearing a buzz?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, there
It
we go. Now it's
stopped.
gone. Now it stopped. Yeah.
It's the fan on my computer. It's apparently my computer's freaking out.
At least it's not the helicopters that are searching for you.
Yeah, I know. They're not going to find me. I'm inside with thermal shielding, so the infrared can't find me, and the heat
Well, that also saves you from the
sensors can't find me.
predator if the predator ever
It
decides to go
does.
looking for you too.
It does. Which I learned just don't pick up any weapons and you're fine.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently,
Mm-hmm.
Who
That's
knew?
what the movie taught us. So Night Hunters reminded me it had this underlying feel of I don't know if you ever read the comic of Akira. Of course, the movie's huge, and like I've already seen the movie, so it had like a little bit of a Akira feel to it. The darker side with the motorcycle gangs, and then Blade Runner, which is one of my favorite movies. I felt like a little bit of that in there too. So I was guessing that those are influences.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, I even said earlier, Katsuhiro Otomo was like one of my, drawing idols. Like, I love that guy. And yeah, from a story perspective, I think a lot of it, Alexis Zirot, the artist on the book, had a lot to do with developing the story. He's been drawing these characters for a couple years, and he was like, "Let's do something together. Let's make something. Like, these are these characters I have. I think, we could make a really cool like cyberpunk comic that follows these guys. I don't really know what their backstory is or what they do. I just know they're kind of in this like paramilitary outfit, and this guy looks cool and he's got a robot arm." And I was like, comics have been sold on much less than this guy looks cool and has a robot arm. I think we're off to the races. So yeah, we kind of like, we're thinking of it almost kind of like, if Paul Verhoeven directed a movie set in Venezuela, about class conflict and kind of that has this kind of satirical or sardonic sense of humor that's kind of influenced by Judge Dredd in 2000 AD, but at the same time, has a lot of Oedo, the anime, what's it called, Cyber City Oedo, and yeah,
I can't remember.
Whatever, that book or that anime, and then like you're saying, the kind of the anime cyberpunk wave that happened in the early to mid 80s in Japan, all that stuff kind of wrapped up in Alexis's badass way of drawing dudes with guns and stuff.
Bubblegum Crisis and such.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. And so the book kind of stems from those initial aspirations, and then unfortunately has just become so exceedingly relevant. Like it's profoundly disturbing to me, the parallels between the stuff that I wrote as pure science fiction and has manifested today. Like it's please vote, right. Tuesday, please go vote, please vote.
Yes, I just got confirmation that my ballot has been accepted, so we're good.
Yeah, mine too.
But it's funny. I had just read a thing. It's a meme somebody had posted on Facebook or whatever, and it said, those of you who think that science fiction writers are predicting the future are missing the point entirely. They're taking what they see now and extrapolating it to its logical conclusion, and to an extreme conclusion. So those who think that Orwell predicted the security and surveillance state really didn't get it. He was already seeing the surveillance state and extrapolating it to its logical conclusion, and the fact that we're actually living it means we didn't listen to him.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
he was warning us the first time round. And I thought that was a very profound statement, because I feel like, I'm just writing right now just because I write, because I think I'm very much like you. That's what I got to do.
Yeah, same. I mean, whether I was working on this Star Trek book or working on other things, that's just who I am. That's just what's
we just
in there.
stories.
Yeah, exactly.
But I feel like that's what I keep seeing. I keep seeing patterns in the world and going, oh, hey, this would make an interesting story, because if you take this pattern and then you extrapolate it out, I feel like that's what I do, is that very thing. I'll see a pattern and I'll take that pattern and move with it. And so it makes a very different thing. But I feel like that's what sci-fi authors kind of do. It's in our field. I mean, mystery authors, they see murder everywhere, you know? But I think sci-fi authors, we see patterns, and we're looking for the extrapolation of that pattern.
Yeah.
And so I find it fascinating. And I like the fact that we can sometimes fit these patterns into a genre like cyberpunk, or even the steampunk stuff. There's this new steampunk or diesel punk which is coming up, which is an extrapolation of what would have happened if World War One tech just kept going. And I find all of that stuff fascinating, and just the genres and the cultures. I agree with you on that one. So I don't know where I was going. I had a train of thought, but it got derailed.
A couple of questions I'm going to jump in, because you derailed yourself there. Way to go. What's your opinion of e-readers? And as a comic writer, I assume you still get credit if someone purchases the comic, be it that.
Yeah.
So,
well, I guess it depends on what you're asking. So for work for hire stuff, the royalty rates are completely different. Every company handles work for hire completely different, which is a huge problem because there are no unions in comics. So in film and television, when someone works on a property or project that is guild sanctioned, there's a baseline. If you buy something on iTunes or stream it, the original creators get X number of dollars. For comics, that's not the case. Some
it'd be
people.
Nice if we could get paid scale for comics, wouldn't it? Just saying.
It's because comics people are self-loathing and they don't value themselves, and so there's like a whole industry. Like everybody's so just ravenous to try and get in that they're willing to sacrifice everything. There's like a tier of the industry that are publishers that are specifically oriented around taking advantage of young people and young creators and just screwing them over and making them sign contracts that they don't understand the realities of. I'm very fortunate in that I live a life where I have organized it to a degree where I have the minimal amount of responsibility, so that when those contracts did come, and they did, I've been offered publishing contracts with corporations or companies that were not in my best interest. I was able to turn them down, and I was able to say, this isn't right for me. But I am privileged in that, because there are people that any opportunity they have to take, and there are publishers that take advantage of that and specifically strip mine intellectual property away from the creators. Most comic book companies that published creator-owned comics, they're not creator-owned. They're like 49% owned by the creator, 51% by the company. Most of them. Thankfully, Floating World, not that. We own all of Night Hunters. Jason at Floating World is great. Can't recommend people purchasing their other books enough. Slasher by Chuck Forsman is awesome. All Time Comics is great. But most publishers that claim to be creator owned they're just not. And so the question that you're asking about, like I think you're asking a question about royalties for digital purchases, right? Yeah.
Does it benefit you equally if I were to buy it digitally versus if I went into a comic book store and bought it? Obviously, it hurts the comic book store if I buy it digitally, but as a writer, I was wondering how does that.
I don't personally subscribe to the idea that purchasing a comic digitally hurts a brick and mortar store. That's kind of like saying, if I stream a movie on Netflix, does that kill a movie theater somewhere? It's like, No, I don't agree with that. I think if a movie theater is being outpaced by a more accessible, easy to consume distribution model, then they need to advance with the times. I care about the medium of comics, and I deeply care about comic book stores. I've worked at two of them. Like, I deeply care about the culture surrounding those places, but I care about comics as a medium. If comic book stores are a thing that have to go away for the medium to live on forever, that's what's important. We outlived the newspaper stand. Like, we outlived the spinner rack. I have no doubt that there will be a point, whether it's tomorrow or 50 years from now, where comic book stores will not exist, but the medium of comics is still vibrant and still growing.
Mhm. As a consumer, I've noticed a huge difference between myself and my son because
Mhm.
when he was young, I take him to Free Comic Book Day, and it's like, so here's a comic, here's how you take care of it, here's how you put the cardboard backing and the wrapper in, which nobody taught me. So, like, my first printing of the third edition of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is trashed because nobody taught me how to take care of it when I was a kid collecting comics. So I'm not going to make that mistake with you. So got him into some comics, but then being of the younger age, he's gravitated more to wanting to just read comics on his phone. And I'm like, well, it must just be a nostalgia thing. Since I'm older, I like having the physical copy of the comic to be able to loan to people, and the texture of just having it, and then feeling like I helped an artist and an establishment by collecting this and buying it.
I think there's two. I think there's 2 points to be made off of what you're saying. One, I think I like both. I read a lot of digital comics, and I read a lot of physical, like books that I buy, or floppy issues. Like, I like all forms of comics, or even, like, I just ordered these tankobon from Japan, where they're oh, there's the camera. It's a Halloween tankobon where it,
cover that up.
Oh, was it something bad? Oh, I didn't even.
I don't know. It's just trying to avoid any possibilities. I've been reading a lot of horror manga, so who knows what will pop.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good because it's like shonen stuff, but who knows. But yeah, so
it's shonen and it's not shoujo, and so we're okay.
But I think that there's the interesting fulcrum that you just hit on is this idea of that I would point out would be the idea of the fact that ownership is not the same now as it was 15 years ago. When you bought, or even 20 years, 30 years ago, when you bought Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #3, you owned that thing. With a lot of these digital apps, some of them allow you to download DRM-free PDFs or JPEGs or whatever of the actual files so that you have them on your hard disk forever and you own it. Some of them just house it within the app. And this is a major problem because a lot of times those files get removed. Like the Scott Pilgrim video game was never released physically. It was only released on Steam, and they pulled it, 3, 4, 5 years ago, and it literally didn't exist anymore. That's thousands of hours of a piece of artwork that these people poured their souls into that fans love and want to enjoy, but can't because of the form factor of technology and the way that our society is progressing. So I think it's a dual-edged sword. We want instant distribution and instant access, and we don't want to have to wait for whatever the media is that we're consuming, which I agree is a good thing. Like, I think you shouldn't have to have people organize their life around your distribution model. Like, you should exist and people then find it and it's then a part of their life. The other side of that being when that goes awry and multimedia corporate conglomerates pull pieces of artwork that legions of people want but now don't have access to. So that there's an interesting discussion to be had there that obviously I don't have all the answers to.
No, but it is a very deep thought, and I've been thinking about like, we've got kind of a larger problem in that same vein. You think about things like properties like Firefly, which was just held on to and then nobody did anything with after Serenity. But there are a lot of people who would have loved to have picked up with fan work or whatever. What was it? My wife was watching Dark Matter, and they just canceled in third season on a cliffhanger. So the last episode of Dark Matter in third season is this cliffhanger. It's horrible. They've been building to this entire like worldview thing, and it's just gone.
Yep.
You know, it's just gone. I think about shows like Moonlighting or Dharma and Greg. So those are two that I managed to find at a Tsutaya in Japan, and I just found the Region 2 discs, and I'm like, huh. And I brought them back here, and I've got them back there in my collection, but you can't find Moonlighting anywhere. ABC has just never decided to release it. So there's entire, people who do not realize that Bruce Willis used to be a comedic person. He used to do funny stuff, back in the day. And nobody knows that because they only know him from the Die Hard movies. And so they don't know him from his days in Moonlighting, which was my mom's favorite. You got to think about my mom's favorite show when in the 80s, and I watched tons of episodes. So it's nostalgic for me. And I always think about that too because the same things happened. They didn't re-release it. They never released it on video, yada, yada, yada. They don't exist. It vanished. And it's the same thing. You've got hundreds of thousands of people, maybe hundreds, maybe just thousands of people who worked on this show and did really good art. There were writers. There were, even if you just think of like gaffers and grips and things like that, they all worked on this show. They put their blood, sweat, and tears into it. And it's gone. It just vanished. And it's never to be seen again. Some of those things, even when you look at like Knight Rider, I've seen recently some episodes of Knight Rider. As an 80s kid, Knight Rider was the thing, right? I watch it now and I'm like, oh, David. Oh, man, David. Oh, my God, David.
Yeah, but that opening theme song is great, though. Come on.
It's beautiful, right? Or Airwolf or Blue Thunder. They're all that same field.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing, and I agree with you. It's like what happens to the art when the corporation decides that you can't have it anymore? How does that affect the artists?
Yeah,
the people who put the art together.
And it's really exceedingly worrisome moving forward. Just go back to Troy's point of the digital side of it, because it's not like you can just stumble across a Region 2 Blu-ray in Japan of some of these things. Like they just will exist and then they just won't anymore.
Yeah.
So
on a good note, there will be a 10-year anniversary complete edition of Scott Pilgrim, the video game, coming out before the holidays, available on Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, Google Stadia, PC, Xbox One. I had to look it up because I haven't played it in a long time and I didn't even realize it wasn't accessible.
Yeah, there was a period where people were selling PlayStation that had it inside of, like, downloaded.
That's why I still have it, because I downloaded
Yep.
it. Okay, because I was like, I feel like I've played it recently, but not like very recently. So for those of you who don't have it, it's a fun side-scrolling teamwork cooperative combat game, like in the TMNT video game or the Simpsons video game. So I recommend getting it for the holidays if you guys like the movie or the comic. And it's coming back, unlike Knight Rider, which I don't know if that's actually coming back.
Which might come back,
They did.
or it might not.
They'll reboot it the way they did MacGyver.
I mean, they've rebooted it, 4 times now? They had the one where it was him and a legion of other kids all driving cars called Knight Riders. And then they had the reboot with a different guy as Michael Knight. And then they had the one with the woman. So that's at least 3. So there's at least 4 Knight Rider shows.
It's wild. Okay, so where can we find you on the internet, my friend?
Absolutely. You can find me at heydavebaker.com. You can find all my comics, all that good stuff. You can also, if you're interested in listening to me talk about the horrifying miasma, nightmare fuel of the intersection of the human condition and technology and obscure pop culture, you could listen to my podcast, which is called Deep Cuts. It's an explainer show where me and my good buddy Andrew Price pick a topic and walk you through the ins, the outs, and the nitty-gritty so that you can appear like an interesting and idiosyncratic person at your next forced social function. It's an E. It's H-E-Y.
Why did I write that with an A?
He's not a farmer.
Because I thought you said Hayes. And so I was like, it took me a second.
But yeah, heydavebaker.com. It's all there. And yeah, Seven's Reckoning, Star Trek Voyager from IDW Comics. Me and Angel Hernandez comes out
November
11th. 11th. Yeah. Did you see my brain being like, I don't know?
I remember November, but I had 7 of 9.
So everything's Covember. It's
Covember.
just the only thing I can remember now. All the months since March or just
Yep.
Covember.
Yeah, pretty
we're at
much.
Covember 250th.
Yep.
You know,
And
that's
then
what
on Covember 24th, Night Hunters comes out from Floating World Comics by me, Alexis Zirrit, and Robert Negretti.
Nice. Thank you so much for joining us, and I appreciate it a lot. I mean, because this is great. I mean, I know we kind of left poor Troy there because the Trekkies just started talking, and Troy's like, "I'm just here."
Oh, I just asked the smart questions.
That's what you have to do. That's your job.
Mhm.
So, but thank you for joining us, and I hope to see you again. Maybe I'll bring you on and next time whenever something like really big happens, and we got to like talk about, you know.
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, Star Trek stuff.
Seven doing a thing, or I don't know.
Sounds great. Yeah,
I could just do an interview of Lower Decks and stuff.
Right? We just
Yeah.
review Lower Decks.
I loved Lower Decks. I'm
That is
totally
the
game.
best.
Yeah,
I do
it's
too.
really, really great.
Okay. So if you want to stick with us after the show, we'll have Green Room here again, and we'll be out for, well, once I figure out which button I'm pushing, we'll be out for about 1 minute. Okay. Thank you guys all for joining us tonight. I've been Guy,
I've been Troy.
and this is Geek Tank.